Dr. Malik. He is currently professor at CSIR, Indian Institute of Integrative Medicine in Srinagar. His major research interest is to understand the fundamental regulatory mechanisms associated with tumor metastasis and therapeutic resistance in TNBCs. He started his career, his major awards are in 2009, he got the National Young Scientist Award. Then in 2014, he got the National Swern Jayanti prestigious fellowship award from DST. And then in 2015, he had the National Bioscience Career Development Award. Today, he is going to talk about the TNBC, and the title of his talk is Discovery and Preclinical Development of Small Molecule Targeting Paclitaxel Resistant Cancer Stem Cells in TNBCs. So, over to you, Dr. Malik.
Thank you for a nice introduction. So, I thank the organizing committee and their lab for giving me the opportunity to be here to present my work. So, it has been 3 years I have not traveled out from my house. So I'm thankful to all of you for giving me this, forceful opportunity to be out of my home and take a travel till Delhi. So I got about 20 presentations.
Your name is there. Yes.
Yeah. So today I'll be talking about how I have been working on particularly the growing concern, the highest incident cancer, the breast cancer, how major focus in the breast cancer remains the triple negative breast cancers. So my talk will be more about how we try to understand the fundamental biology related to its aggressiveness and how we are actually looking for the natural product small molecules to actually target this cancer. So as all of I will not, because this is a very common slide everybody knows, but because students are around, so I just want to make them aware that the breast cancer has been it is the largest incidence in the world. It is the #1 cancer in terms of the incidence, so with and the mortality, and not only globally, but coming to India. So from 2 years back, it was a cervical cancer which was having the highest incidence in India, but breast cancer has now overtaken the cervical cancer and is #1 cancer in India. So the growing incidence of breast cancer in India is again a concern which we try to look and address locally. And before coming to the incidence, and I will just try to brief you about the breast cancer has clinically been actually divided into 4 different subtypes. Depends upon the expression of the hormones, AR/PR. So it's a luminal A, luminal B, which are which have AR/PR receptors present on them. So there are aromatase inhibitors which are have been very successful, and they are not more aggressive cancers. And there's a HER2, which the epithelial growth factor is there. So Herceptin is the blockbuster drug, and other drugs have been there for this subtype of cancer. And the third one is the triple negative breast cancer, and which doesn't have all these receptors. It is AR/PR negative and HER2 negative. It is the most aggressive cancer subtype. So the only chemotherapy and radiotherapy is the only option for those patients, despite certain agents have been tried for target-based therapy, but have not been successful so far. So why I'm most interested in looking for triple negative breast cancers is because compared to United States, India has the highest incidence of this type of subtype of cancer. So TNBC is the highest in India. So compared to 15% incidence in the US, India has 28% incidence of triple negative breast cancers. So that's an alarming situation in India. There's a lot of literature has been shown it now that triple negative breast cancer burden has been increasing in India, particularly in the young ladies. The concern is the ladies which are below the age of 40 are actually suffering from this type of cancer. There's a lot of literature has been recently published how this cancer is actually making this space in Indian women. So why triple negative breast cancer is more aggressive? So I just want to add on a few things here, like because this TNBC is more like a more non-undifferentiated type of cancer. So you can see that, as I said, there are different type of cancers. There are Claudin low, there's a basal, there's a HER2 and luminal. So luminal cancers are more differentiated cancers. HER2s are also like kind of differentiated cancers. But these triple negative breast cancers are their undifferentiated cancers, and they have more similarity towards the when the memory during the memory development, when the cells start becoming from stem cells to progenitor cells to myoepithelial cells and differentiated cells. So based on the similarity between the normal breast development and the cancer cells, you can see these triple negative breast cancers fall on the top, which are more closely towards the characteristics are more similar to the stem-like cells. So what are these stem-like cells? They are 0.01 to 1% of cells existing in all the tumors, and have been shown from literature they have a powerful selective power. They are highly invasive and motile. They are responsible for recurrence, and the cells have a poor clinical outcome. So studies have shown that these cells, a lot of literature has come out from last 2 decades that these cells are the origin of metastasis and non-responsiveness to the chemotherapies. So in particularly TNBCs, so 70 to 80% of the TNBCs are actually, they have P53 mutations, and 40 to 50% of the TNBCs are like a P10 mutations. And the patients who have the double mutation of P10 and P53 is the most aggressive subtype of this TNBC. So it has been shown that when there is a loss of these tumor suppressors, so the level of AKT is very high because it falls down, because P10 is a tumor suppressor, which doesn't let the PI3 to phosphorate AKT. So when this P10 is mutated or lost, so its AKT expression goes up. So it has been shown that the higher AKT expression leads to poor prognosis of these TNBCs, whereas low AKT shows a better prognosis. So it depends upon patients. So the question in our mind came, so this AKT has actually 3 isoforms. So we try to understand what nature needs to make the 3 isoforms of AKT. So we try to understand how each isoform of AKT plays a role in aggressiveness and TNBCs and how this is affecting the stem cells. So it was our collaborative work, our British counterparts. So we took breast cancer samples from British origin samples, and also took breast cancer primary samples from the Indian origin, and we tried to do immunohistochemistry and see what is the expression of 3 AKTs. And we found it's a primary breast cancer tissue, the AKT1 level was quite high, and it was found both in the British samples as well as in Indian samples. So while other expression of other AKT2 and 3 was not as high as there was AKT1. So, but when we took the metastatic samples, so it was some British liver normal tissue, it's a liver metastatic tissue. We took a legend from the liver metastatic side and looked for again the expression of 3 AKTs. We found AKT2 was high in the metastatic sample compared when it was contrary to this in normal tissue, in primary breast tissue, primary breast cancer, AKT1 was higher, while in metastatic sample AKT2 was high. So similarly, we also found, we couldn't find liver samples in India, but we found some lung metastatic samples of breast, and we found here it was, the samples were taken from the Gujarat Cancer Institute. And we again found in lung metastatic samples AKT2 was quite high. So then we try to understand what different AKTs actually, different isoforms of AKT play a role, and how they behave when we put in the cell. So we took MCF10A, because MCF10A is like immortalized normal cell, and this is BT549 is like a triple negative breast cancer cell. So we try to understand by inhibiting the expression of all 3 AKTs and see what will happen. So we did this individual knockdown of AKT. We also did a double knockdown of AKTs, but I'm showing the data of double knockdown. So when you do the knockdown of AKT3 and AKT1, so only AKT2 is present here. So you can see the invasion and migration of the cells actually increased when the AKT2 was there. So again, in this cell line, when we knock down AKT1 and 3 and only AKT2 is there present, so you can see the invasion and migration potential of these cells was considerably increased compared to other cells. Sorry. So now I try to understand. There's a defined stem cell markers, and there's a the established protocol for analyzing the stemness of those cells, like the mammosphere assay. So these cells, when they grow in a single cell, they form spheres. So we do the sphere formation assay, mammosphere formation assay. We perform it with these cells. So the cells where there's a double knockdown of AKT1 and AKT3 means when only AKT2 is present. So you can see higher number of mammospheres were formed there. And similarly, there's another assay, the ALDH is a stem cell marker assay. So normally it shows is a marker of cancer stem cells in TNBC and other cells. So when we knock down individual AKTs and we knock down both the AKTs, so the point here is when there was AKT1 and 3 was knocked down and only AKT2 was present, you can see that population of stem cell was expanded considerably from 4% to 12%. So showing that the role of presence of AKT2 only actually enhance the stemness in those cells. So it was very interesting to first we try to understand. There were many experiments where we keep on proving how these individual AKT isoforms actually affect the stemness in breast cancers, and then we screen many chemotherapeutic agents and see how these individual AKT isoforms actually respond to this. So it was like quite amazing to see here when we knocked down AKT1. So cisplatin was unable to induce apoptosis in those cells. So you can see here the caspase, cleavage caspase. When there's knockdown by AKT2 and 3, the caspase is cleaved, and this PARP1 is like an apoptotic marker, the cleavage of PARP. So when there was no AKT1 isoform, those cells couldn't go through the apoptosis and cells were alive, while other cells could die through the cisplatin. And then what we did, we enforced it. We put ectopic, we put AKT1 overexpression in those cells by putting lentivirus here, which is expressing AKT1, and we could see by putting AKT1 overexpressing AKT1 in those cells, these cells could actually respond to the cisplatin and can undergo to the apoptosis. You can see the cleavage of caspase and the cleavage of PARP. So showing that this slide actually showed that the expression of AKT1 could be actually a biomarker to understand whether the treatment of cisplatin can be effective in the patients who have loss of AKT1 or who are mutated AKT1, where this AKT1 is not functioning. So this can actually indicate that analyzing the expression of AKT1 in clinical samples could be very informative to design the treatment. And then we put the same experiment in the mice and see when there's a knockdown of AKT1, the cells could not respond to cisplatin. The tumor also said tumors are growing well. While knockdown of other AKT2s, the tumor was actually reduced. So again showing that the knockdown of AKT1, when there is no expression of AKT1 isoform, this mice were not responding to the cisplatin treatment. So then we try to understand what is the reason that this AKT1 is actually making these cells non-responsive. So we did a number of experiments and ultimately find that there is a ABCG2 protein which is actually a flexing, flex form protein. So we found that the ABCG2 was under the knockdown of AKT1, this ABCG2 expression was going high and it was actually flexing the drug out of the cells. So when we put the cisplatin plus knockdown by siRNA, by knocking down the ABCG2 protein, we could actually restore the apoptosis in those cells by putting the cisplatin in the cell. And the same was done in other cells also. So since the idea was actually to look for look for the individual AKT isoforms. So we tried to establish an assay in our lab, where a kinase assay, where we actually screened around 700 molecules from our national product repository, and we found like there are 2 hits which can actually selectively target AKT2, and they are not targeting. There's like a good fold change between them, like AKT2 is only 1.48 nanomolar, while AKT1 is 90.1 nanomolar inhibitory potential. So we took this molecule for further studies and tried to understand how it is targeting those cancer stem cells. So the red ones are here cancer stem cells, and this that's what we are actually looking to target, to have a long-lasting response. So in this case, what we did is we did the experiment. This experiment has also been done in the literature. So we treated the triple-negative breast cancer cells with the paclitaxel. So, and this is the stem cell population. You can see here in the control there is 6.2% cells are stem-like cells, but when we put the paclitaxel, their population was up to 20%. So means the relative population was increased, because this protein was, paclitaxel was only targeting their differentiated cells, but this population of cells was not getting targeted. That's why the relative population of the cells got increased from 6% to 21%. So, but when we took the molecule which we have identified in our previous study and put in those cells, you can see we put the paclitaxel plus the molecule. So you can see the population came down from 21% to 6% to 2%, 81%, 0.2% at a different concentration of this natural product molecule. So at 40 micromolar, the population came down from 22% to 0.76%. So it was actually effectively killing those cancer stem cells which were not able to be killed by paclitaxel alone. So this is another assay which shows the selective renewal capabilities, like mammosipher assay. So we again see that paclitaxel was not able to take care of those cells, but IIIM152 plus paclitaxel was able to kill all those cells. So these are the stem cell markers. You can see the OCT4 and SOX. By the treatment of this molecule, the expression of these stem cell markers was considerably went down in both the cells, SUM159 and MDMB231. So then we put a mice experiment again, and we tried to see whether this molecule was able to inhibit tumor growth. It was able to inhibit the tumor growth, slow the tumor progression at 50 mg per kg concentration. Not only that, we excised these tumors and subject them to flow cytometry and try to understand what happened to stem-like cell populations. And we see that IIIM152 treatment in the mice brought down stem cells from 13% to 6%. So again, showing that our in vitro data was verified that this molecule is actually targeting stem-like cells in these breast cancers. So we found this molecule very safe. So we did a pathology of all the vital organs. This molecule was not causing any damage to cells, and we found a very promising pharmacokinetic profile of this molecule. And this molecule we have currently submitted patent, and the CSR, the organization, which they have selected this molecule for the IND filing. So we are undergoing preclinical studies for this molecule right now. And this is the team who was working with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Malik, for the nice presentation. You can ask some questions.
Yeah, it is a nice presentation. My question is about stem cell marker in MDMB231 cells. How did you measure? Did you isolate the stem cell population from MDMB231 cells?
Yeah, there's a set protocols for that. So we have different markers. There is a CD4424.
So what population will you get out of those MDMB231 cells?
Yeah, normally if we put ALD which is a marker, if you use ALD, it's only like 4 to 6% population are only stem-like cells. So rest 96 are more differentiated like cells.
Another thing I noticed that you did some work in BT549 cells.
Yeah.
Those were cell line work.
Right.
But for the mice you selected 41.
Yeah.
What was the reason you selected cell line?
The reason is because BT549 is a women's TNBC, but 41 is a mouse BTC. But the reason why we put 41 is because I don't want to use immune-compromised mice. I want to use immune-competent mice to replicate what is actually the condition in human beings. So that's why we put 41 as women mice, sometimes immune-competent mice biopsy. So to be a relevant model. Yeah.
And about one basic question about small molecules. How do you decide that your molecule that you identified is a small molecule, it is not a...
Our institute has it has almost 1 million small molecule repository. There's a huge library there. So we keep on screening, and we have assays, certain kinase assays where we keep on screening. So I set up this kinase assay of like PL3 123 and then screen those molecules. First we go through the virtual. So we do some computational biology where we identify these can be probable hits, and then we do. Is it all? Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no questions, thanks Fayad. Thanks for the nice presentation. So we move on.